Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Perakee podcast. Today I have with me Bob Davis. He is Bob Davis, PhD. He's a scientist, international researcher. He's written, internationally recognized researcher. He has written 3 books, and he's working on a movie right now, and he's here to tell us all about that. Why don't you tell the people about yourself, Bob, where you're from, and what you do?
Well, I got my doctorate from the Ohio State University back in '81. Did a lot of research on electrophysiology and psychoacoustics, experimental psych. Always a closet ufologist. Never admitted it really to anyone for obvious reasons. And fortunately, that is destigmatizing as things are changing, of course, with government disclosure with a small d, but nevertheless, it's a step in the right direction. And the last book I wrote, Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality, and You, while I was writing that, Brad, I always thought that would make a great documentary. It covered everything. Trying to make sense of the paranormal, UFOs, consciousness, and everything in between. And there is certainly an interrelationship. And right now I'm working on a documentary with Dave Beatty, well known, as you know, as a producer director of the Nimitz Encounters, which got 6 million views and really got a lot of traction following the Nimitz incident, which of course is a topic of focus right now. So Dave and I are working on that documentary, and people can go to consciousnessfilm.info for more information about that. And if they resonate with what I talk about and wish to support it, please, I hope they can contribute to the GoFundMe page and help us travel to interview key people. And we got, as you know, Brad, many experts in the field. I can go on, but to name a few, like Eben Alexander, the noted author of Proof of Heaven, Near-Death Experiences, and Jeff Long from the Near-Death Experiencer Research Foundation, neuroscientists like Diane Hennessy Powell, Grant Cameron is also going to be in our documentary. We have Dean Radin, leading scientist who studies ESP, many other related aspects of that phenomenon. Firmly believes in ESP as I do. It is real, subtle but real. And I can go on with the names that we have. It's an outstanding array of people. Even Gary Nolan is going to be in there. But people can see who's going to participate on our website. And it'll take too long to mention everybody's name, but we got all the scientists that are trying to contribute their perspective on consciousness and the paranormal, and trying to make sense of this complex reality that we all are in, far more complex than people can ever imagine. Those that do experience say non-3D physical reality, they become lit, and they realize, as real as the back of their hand, that there is much more to this reality than people can ever imagine. So we want to capture that in a documentary in an objective fashion, bring in these experts to present their theories as well as experiences, Brad, because that's critical to tying the physical sciences with the subjective, the essence of the experience, which is very hard to put into words. When people have these experiences, whether it's a near-death, out-of-body interaction on board a UFO, as people say, it's ineffable. This 4D reality that they're in, where they talk about no space, no time, unconditional love. I floated out of my body into a matrix, reality, interacted with non-human entities and intelligences. It's hard to find the words for them to get the point across. It's real. It's real, but there's not much meaning there because it's not a 3D kind of a reality that they experience. So it's hard to find that the language to the essence of what they really went through, what it feels like in the heart. But we're trying to tie that together to create that paradigm shift where we integrate both the physical and the subjective. And that's what is sorely needed. And we can go into quantum physics a little bit, because it certainly makes a lot more sense than Newtonian physics in terms of explaining the kinds of experiences people report in this non-3D environment. So we're trying to wake people up. And that's what the documentary is about.
Shifting consciousness, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you say, it's a tricky thing. I've been listening to some of your, I've heard you on many places, coast to coast, and quite a few other podcasts. And like I've heard you say, like science being something that has to be measurable and repeatable and, you know, isn't going to recognize all these things. And you yourself as a scientist got to keep your lips zipped and everything while you're in your careers and doing your studies, or you're not going to go get funding. You're going to be called crazy and this and exactly what you're saying, unless you've had an experience, personally seen a UFO or a UAP, had an out-of-body experience. Both of those have happened to me. Psychedelic experiences, connection to the oneness and God. I've had that. I've heard you say you've had Kundalini experiences. I practice Kundalini yoga, not as much as I should. I'm not that flexible, but I was brought through an experience. I always do meditation, transcendental meditation, binary beats, and one day I had come across a Kundalini yoga a video on the YouTube, and I thought, oh, I'll put that on and I'll give that one. Well, I felt like I just about levitated right off the ground. I felt I lifted right off the ground. I swear to God I had. And so then I really started researching Kundalini, and I found a lady that happened to be down the road that teaches Kundalini yoga, and that's a pretty rare one. It's not one that's around a lot. And so yeah, unless you've had these experiences, these things, like you said, that's why it's not been studied or funded, because you can't interpret that to somebody else. It's so personal, your connection to God or to any other experience like that. You just can't relate it unless somebody's been there.
It's so non-traditional. Yeah. And it doesn't, you can't ascribe a scientific method to it, to study it, to quantify it. And thus science, of course, mainstream science, is not going to fully embrace it in a uniform way. So that's why there's so many theories out there. But quantum physics makes more sense than Newtonian in terms of making more sense of the paranormal. And nobody has the answers. You know, like what's the UAP? What's it all about? What's the objective? Who's behind the intelligence? Near-death experiences where people talk about unconditional love and meeting deceased relatives and everything in between. We keep hearing these stories. It's endless. And the point is, that's where we're at. Just describing these experiences, we're really scratching the surface, but that's the first important step. We're all becoming more aware of these kinds of experiences, and with the government now admitting that the UAP is real.
That seems to go right over everybody's heads, though.
It does, because those that don't believe in it will say it's China, it's Russia, you know, that has an advanced weapon. They'll write it off. Eventually, however, the critical information will come out that will firmly conclude that this is not of earthly origin, and the date and unacknowledged access programs have been studying this for decades. There's a wealth of data out there not being disclosed. Listen to Hal Puthoff's recent lecture. Okay, he's someone certainly in the know. Hal Puthoff, noted scientist from Stanford Research Institute, who believes well, he doesn't know exactly what the UAP is. He leans towards the ET hypothesis. Not that it is, but we can go on and on about where the origin is and what the intelligence is behind it. And it's important to try to get at that if we're allowed to. But we don't have the science. We're still certainly in the infancy in terms of our evolutionary understanding of science to begin with. How many years ago were we fighting in a civil war? Let alone 100 years from now, when great advances will be made. And I suspect strongly that that paradigm shift will occur at least by then, so that we not only much better understand the phenomenon, we may very well be interacting with them on a routine basis, for all I know, especially if we start messing around with nukes, because if we're getting any messages,
Right,
of course,
yeah.
from them, that's one message we got. Stop this. They activate, deactivate nuclear missiles, both here and in Russia. That's a direct innovation, because that's affecting them. So, and they interact in other ways too, but in a very subtle way, on an individual way. But they're all around us, and people flying off the West Coast, I guess, they see it all the time. The Navy pilots all over the world are reporting them. But then, of course, they're not going to talk until they retire. Many now who are retiring are coming out and speaking, of course, on record of their experiences.
So you've had your own what we call peak experiences that propelled you to write your books and do those. Do you want to tell the folks about those?
I had, the first one was Sedona, Arizona, back in 2012, walking around with my wife in the night, looking at the night sky. Suddenly I see an orange orb, your classic orange orb. I'm looking at it, left-brained as I am, I'm trying to analyze it, of course. I'm trying to figure out if it's a geomagnetic, atmospheric, obviously. And as I'm looking at it, maybe it heard me, because suddenly another one either emanated from it or from behind it and appeared just next to it, as if it's telling me, maybe not, no, this isn't atmospheric. It doesn't behave that way. It could be plasma based, which could be intelligent, by the way. But that motivated me to write the first book, The UFO Phenomenon, which is like an intro text to ufology. For being the academician I am, it's like a textbook. I try to be objective. I didn't really express my personal viewpoints. You try to balance it, so let the reader decide. Okay, I got a little lit from that. Then I had a shared death experience. I had a lucid dream that I was dying, suffocating, horrendous. And I knew during that experience, my friend and colleague who I worked with in the lab at the State University of New York had passed away. I knew it. Don't ask me how, I just did. And later that morning, I found out that she did, just sort of right around the time that I had that lucid dream. That motivated me to write my second book, Life After Death, an analysis of the evidence. So I went into mediumship, NDEs and OBEs, reincarnation, quantum physics too, which gets at it more so than traditional science. And then I had that wild, 2 years later than that, I had a wild, I don't know what you want to call it, mystical experience. Some people call it Kundalini. It was blissful, wonderful, anxiety provoking, of course, when it initially happens, especially when you're walking around in the summer in Sydney, Australia, and you want to be in nature hugging trees instead of dodging cars, on busy streets. That motivated me. It was wonderful. And I'm glad I had it for many reasons. Still need to fully integrate it, but it was wonderful. And it gave me a better sense of reality. And I'm sane. Some people may question their heads. I'm sane. I may be a little anxious at times, but I'm not schizophrenic, nor are everybody who's reporting these things. If you are, yeah, but come on, 98% of the people that talk about this are well-balanced, more well-balanced than me. It's valid, and these people need to be supported. And most, of course, don't talk about it. But then, because of that experience, I wrote Unseen Forces, my last book. Unseen Forces is the integration of science, reality, and you. And while I was writing it, I knew it would become a documentary. Don't ask me why, I just knew it. Then I retired 2 years after that. No, excuse me. I had retired before that, but after I wrote that, I thought, you know something, let me give it a shot. I'm going to write a proposal, send it out to some producers, see what happens. Maybe somebody will want to do a documentary. The first person I contact, guess who? Dave Beatty. Dave Beatty.
Oh, hey, Bob. I lost you there for 1 second. We had to skip in the. Can you start back at where you had retired?
Yeah.
I lost you for about 30 seconds.
Okay. I retired in 2012, but in about 2018, after I wrote Unseen Forces, the Integration of Science, Reality, and You, I thought it would become a documentary. I just felt that it would make something that people should be aware of, to wake people up. The first producer I sent my proposal to, who might be interested in turning this into a film, was none other than Dave Beatty of the Nimitz Encounter fame, who he produced and directed it. And again, as I mentioned, really made great traction with it. Got 6 million views on his YouTube site for that, and it's still being talked about extensively. Beautiful work. The first person, so he says, let's meet. I didn't know Dave Beatty, that he made that film. He didn't know me either. Not that I'm a big celebrity, but I've been around. I wrote a few articles, but he didn't know me. I didn't know him. We're having lunch, and we started talking, and he says, you ever see the Nimitz Encounters film? I said, yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, well, I'm Dave Beatty. Didn't mean anything to me. I don't look at credits. Yeah, okay, Dave. I did that film. Wow. How many producers are out there? And here's the dude I get that did the documentary. Then he calls his friend Gary Voorhees, who who's part of the UAPX research organization. And he says to him, do you ever hear this guy, Bob Davis? And Gary says, you ever hear of him? I'm reading the guy's book right now. Okay. And then, a few months after that, I'm on my lanai looking up at the night sky. And I say to myself, Brad, I feel like learning about the names of the stars, get a better sense of what their names are, constellations. So I look towards the north, and I see one, and it was Deneb. Then I look at another one to the left and below. I forget the name. Althena, something like that. Altair. And then I look at another one to the right of it, like a triangle, noted triangle. That's 3 stars. Vega, D. So I said, how am I going to remember it? Well, use an acronym. D, Deneb, A, Althena, I think that's it, not sure. And V, D-A-V, D-A-V, Dave, and Bob Davis. Is that a coincidence? That's a pretty long shot. So we have a lot of these kind of synchronicities, which most people don't even realize, but the timing and meaning was there, as Jung would say. And that was me. Yeah, it was literally and figuratively, Dave and I were meant to be together in the stars. You know what I mean? It's written in the stars. It's literally bigger. So, we're working on it 6 months with appropriate funding. We'll travel to interview people who are more than passionate to participate in the film, because they too, many are experiences, they too want to contribute towards this paradigm shift, to, so to speak, wake people up, whatever that might mean, but bring this to the attention of the masses, because it's real. It's real. Maybe not everything. We read all about it. There's a ton of sense, there's a ton of nonsense out there too. And it's hard to sometimes differentiate between the two, but there's enough sense, enough valid evidence, enough credible witnesses in so many different ways. We can go on talking about the physicality as well as the non-physicality of it, but there seems to be a consciousness component to it, whatever consciousness might mean. And everybody has a different definition of it, of course, because when people interact with it, they have that kind of peak experience, that mystical, uh, ineffable experience where they do feel interconnected with the universe. They feel as if they have a greater sense of their purpose in life, a better understanding of who and what they are. Um, they see a different reality that is so real to them that it can't be ignored. And they become passionate to continue their research and reading and trying to figure out, why me? What does it mean? Who do I tell? Who do I talk to? Do I need medication? Am I going crazy? All of that, all the millions and millions of questions, that's understandable. More, but I commend those that do speak about it, and it's critical to do so, but to the right people, because you go to the psychologist, psychiatrist, that they're going to get the wrong diagnosis. Go to those counselors who are experiencers and that work with people who do experience the, shall we say, the alternative, the paranormal. I don't like that term. The paranormal eventually will be the normal.
Right.
Eventually, but these peak experiences, call it Kundalini, mystical, whatever, it's real, but it's a very general term. People will say, I had a Kundalini experience when they may not have really had a Kundalini experience. When you have one, the cork more than comes out of the bottle. You're different from that day forward.
Yeah.
You know.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you say, I just find it, like, I relate to everything you're saying so much. You take the words right out of my mouth. I'm thinking, is this guy inside my head? The way I think and I feel. I've been having peak experiences or high strangeness since I was a little child. Like some of the first things that happened to me, kind of traumatizing things, is I used to have a mantis figure come through my wall at night, and I would just black out, right? Like as it approached me. UFOs were in very high activity when I was a young man. There was a sawmill along the river, and the workers at night would be sitting out eating their sandwiches, and basically right over my house, behind the mountain, behind the very mountain that I lived up next against, there were UFOs going like crazy. The CBC News would be out there documenting it. So, personally myself, I've seen silver balls, silver orbs right in broad daylight. And it was all me and all my cousins. My mom was driving the minivan back from the wave pool. And I remember she had a horrible migraine. Can you keep the kids quiet? I was the oldest, and I have all the cousins in the back. And the kids all started screaming because a silver ball was about the size of a basketball was tracking us right beside us. And they're all yelling and screaming. I'm like, be quiet, be quiet. And I look, and we're going over a bridge, and sure as heck, it's on one side of us. And then it dips down, it's gone. It's okay, we'll be quiet now. Well, we get about almost the other side of the bridge, and they go, look, now it's on the other side of the bridge. I've also seen triangle craft. I've seen lots of strange lights. I've had my dream world with precognition, all those sorts of things has been like I've had Kundalini experience. You know what I mean? I've had so many things, and once you've had those things, and I've had them since I was a little kid, it, like you said, it propels you. It lights a fire under your ass. You do want to go out and tell everybody and everything, but again, they're just gonna all think you're nuts. And I really appreciate this podcasting world, truth fighters and stuff like yourself. Like you said, we're trying to make this shift. We're trying to raise the vibration and make people more open to it. It's been hard. I started listening to Coast when I was 11 or 12 years old, just to I related to those. These were my people. When I was a little kid, and I found it, right? Like, you guys are my people, and I really appreciate you.
But you see, you're the experts. The millions of people like you who have these kinds of varied experiences from early on in life, as traumatizing as they certainly can be, especially when you're a child and a mantis comes to your room. My good friend, Reverend Michael J. Carter, tells me, Bob, a great touch me. You know that story. What am I going to do with that? I'm a research scientist, follow the scientific method. He's more sane than me, not saying much. A great touch me. Came to my wall and touched. What do I do with that, Brad?
Yeah.
And you know what? A great question. Yeah, but I've had many friends that have, as you do, who relate these kinds of experiences repeatedly, and it runs in families. So you talk to Gary Nolan, your parents have these experiences, grandparents. For some reason, it could be a familial, as he told me in a recent conversation we had, that it is familial. He's a geneticist, immunologist, and he's looking at the structural changes in the brain with that heightened bilateral white matter connectivity that seems to be unique in those that are experiencers. Does that mean you're an antenna and you can attract this, or you become more aware of this other reality? It's hard. We don't know that yet. No, we don't have that answer. But why? Why? You talk about antennas, and a lot of these scientists are looking at not only the simulation theory and VR, and maybe we were created in laboratories somewhere far away, and it's experimental, and every universe is a creation in some lab by who knows what. But torsion energy,
Right.
torsion energy, it's a spin force. And a lot of scientists are looking more at that. You got to get into quantum physics to fill in this in. I certainly don't. I'm not a physicist, but everything spins, from electrons to planets, you name it. But if you look at the brain, and 3D way, you look at the brain like in the front, you tilt it up, the spinal column coming down, it looked like a torus. And some people are thinking that besides consciousness of the body, where we receive information through our senses, we also possibly and also receive this external energy, a force, a spin force that integrates somehow with the brain. And maybe it relates to Hamerhoff's Penrose's or theory, the microtubules, where consciousness may be the seat of microtubules or cytoskeletons of cellular structures in the brain, as well as DNA, would be certainly the site where we do have these quantum processes occurring, and of course we do, that allows for that integration of external energy that exists throughout the universe and the brain. That's why people say when they leave their body, we're one, we're interrelated, we're connected. Because that same energy that's out there is coming in here. You see, we may very well be one, but that's what we need to do. We need to better understand experiences and their story. You're the experts more than the quantum physicists and all the scientists that are studying the UFOs and everything. We need to understand better what the subjective experience. Right now, with Newtonian physics, we forget about spirituality and things we're talking about, and that gap widens, of course. Now, hopefully it'll start to close. That's one of the objectives of the documentary, as well as people like you who are passionate about talking about it, wake people up, inform them of the reality that is far more complex than we can ever imagine. And we need to discuss that because it is real. Science has to catch up to your subjective, and that's a paradigm shift that's needed to better understand how to close that gap and integrate the physical and the subjective.
Yeah, and it's funny, like you say too. The more everybody keeps quiet, there's more of us than we think, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. The more you start talking about it, and people realize you're into that, the more they'll start talking about, having paranormal encounters or psychedelic, or the more they'll be open to it and to sharing it.
And when you become aware of it, when you start listening to it and you resonate with what you're hearing, becoming more aware of it is the initial step, of course, because just becoming more aware of it, for some reason, I feel you invite the phenomena in as you become more aware. And those experiences that you do have in all its manifestations wake you up even more, as difficult as it might be to integrate and to deal with, of course, but it wakes you up to the complexity. And we're so far from understanding this. That's why we do the podcasts and write the books and do the documentaries, because those that feel they are woke up a little bit because of these experiences, they want to tell everybody. Guess what? There's more than just CNN and Fox News and everything else. That's cool. We need everything. We need 3D. We evolved from our bodies, at least evolved out of this primordial soup, as we say. And so we're great at integrating physical reality, but these bits of information that we get from sounds and light and tactile, somatosensory, etc., that's body consciousness. Once you become aware that there's a non-body consciousness, that's when you really wake up. And when you have, like you say, that Kundalini experience, people having near-death out-of-body experiences, they know there's a lot more. That gets that cork out of the bottle, as they say, and they become compassionate. Then they start sharing, and it's a slow, evolving process, but the word spreads, let's put it that way. And with the internet, a lot bad with it, but it's wonderful too. We have more people, like you, sharing these viewpoints much more easily than ever before to millions, where we could not have in the past. And that form of communication really does enhance people's awareness. They resonate with it, and as they do, they start having more experiences. And if you want it, you get it.
The power of intention, yeah.
Yeah, and that should not be denied, because intention is, and its effect on other people and physical systems is real. It's a subtle effect, but we see it experimentally.
Yeah.
Mental intention is a force in and of itself. Whatever that is, call it biophotons, torsion energy, whatever it is, light energy, people are starting to measure that and look at it quite seriously. And it could account for ESP. And maybe this torsion energy is like a carrier wave of electromagnetic energy that connects us, allows for ESP. And I can go on and on about experiments that are done that prove without question that ESP is real. Oh, it's real. Yeah. And PK, psychokinesis. And by ESP, I'm talking about the precognition, and everything else that goes into ESP, clairvoyance, etc., mediumship. It's real. Don't spend money and have go to a psychic on the street corner and give them your money. No, most of them are out for your buck. There are legitimate ones, and there is ample research, quadruple blinded studies that have demonstrated that there are physical mediums that are able to actually retrieve information from the deceased, present it to the living, and they, again, because this experiment is so well controlled, they know that person could not have received that information other than actually meeting the deceased person. It's like Eben Alexander. He talks about this, and he told me about this too. Eben Alexander, noted neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience. He gave up practice, and he's now lecturing all over the world and writing books about his experience, trying to, again, wake people up to the reality of it all. That's how passionate he is to give up a career as a neurosurgeon, to do that. I mean, if that's not a peak experience, a transpersonal event, I don't know what is. Like William Shatner going up into space, coming down, crying, his life is never going to be the same. No. That's a kind of a peak experience. It comes in all different forms and in many different ways. And sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn initially. But we could only theorize about how we integrate with the universe, but that unconditional love, we're all one. John Lennon, I think, had it right, obviously, when he said, love is the answer, and something like that. That's all you need is love. Yeah. All you need is love. Yeah. But he was lit. I used to see him in Central Park back in the 70s. He used to twirl. Oh yeah. He lived in Dakota on the west side of 72nd Street. So, I would go there quite often. I was around there a lot. I was 18, 19 with a bunch of friends who were smoking joints and all that. And then we see this guy with long hair twirling a white rose in his nose like this, trying to be inconspicuous, but no, I'm sorry, that was John Lennon.
Yeah.
He lived right
Wow.
across the street. This man was lit, and he was right. He was right, and we see a lot of musicians, artists, scientists are experiencers. How many inventors say it wasn't my idea?
Tesla.
Newton says that. Tesla, even
Yeah.
Einstein, the theory of relativity came to him in a dream. Brilliant too, but it came to him in a dream. We hear it all the time. Isaac, I forget his name, Edison. It wasn't my idea. It's downloaded, and I've talked to a lot of people who get these downloads, and Grant Cameron talks about it all the time. His downloads, and you go to a psychiatrist saying, hey, I heard a voice in my head and it told
Yeah.
me this, and they're going to put you on, you know what I mean? Something XYZ. There's more proof that ESP is real, that UFOs are real. There's more proof that of their validity than most of the drugs that we take in terms of their safety and efficacy on the human body,
Right.
yet we always ingest it. Yet they're going to give us something to dumb us down and consider people having hallucinatory event of some type, which, of course, a certain percentage of the population are schizophrenic, delusional. Come on, millions of people worldwide, ever since we started writing on cave walls, have been expressing the subjective experiences that you are elaborating on in their own unique way, appropriate for the time. Okay, whether I'm carving it on a rock with bare skin and a stone knife, or painting in the 1600s, showing that white light coming down from a UFO saucer into somebody's head. And we see a lot of that stuff, the symbolic things that in the past, depicted in the past in all its varying forms, in folklore, the Bible, we know that now we're trying to throw the same stuff at it. But now, because of technology, we're trying to measure, EMs, electromagnetic activity. We're measuring using sensors to detect their presence. And we know a lot about that. We are getting, I think, confirmation that they are seeing us, we are seeing them. Whether or not we are actually directly communicating, I don't know. I'm sure they threw Ingo Swann at them too, and remote viewers, which is also real. Another aspect of ESP, of course. Ingo didn't like what he saw. He felt he was being observed. Someone was being remote viewing him.
Wow.
I don't think, and people have those kinds of experiences, and there's many people certainly who are well aware of that. I'm not going to talk about it. And Puthoff, and I encourage people to look for his most recent lecture done not long ago. I mean, a week or two ago, quite revealing, exposing how much we do know. Look, we're now debating: do we have physical material left behind? That analyzing it, that's of extraterrestrial origin, these isotope ratios, that doesn't make sense to us in certain metals. People won't acknowledge it, and they won't go any further. And like crash saucers, they don't go any further. They say, those that are in the know, they won't say definitely. They'll say, it's a possibility, but they're not going to come out and reveal it because they don't want to be in Leavenworth for the rest of their life. They signed that document. It's remarkable, however, how much is known. And here we get to the disclosure issue. The Gillibrand amendment to the bill, again, step in the right direction, but the smallest D in disclosure, critical that we do that. I'm all for disclosure, but we know, I don't know who, but whoever in whatever unacknowledged access program or programs, they know non-human entities are interacting with us. They know it. They do. Do you think that they're going to, with a capital D, disclose that information and tell everybody on the 6 o'clock news, guess what? We're being visited by extraterrestrials. They're interacting with us. A mantis may walk through your wall. It could be gray. You might find yourself on board a spaceship, when ova and sperm being collected. You got to be careful with that. You can't say overnight come out with that. People, obviously, a lot of people are not going to handle that very well, for obvious reasons. And you have to do it. You have to disclose it, but do it in a very pragmatic, slow evolving way.
The soft disclosure that they're trying.
Yeah. So when we say disclosure, I don't know what it means. What do you mean? UAPs are real? That's as far as it'll go, I think, at this point. That's why the DoD doesn't even want to release all their evidence because it's there.
And I think it's more than admitting aliens or any paranormal things like that. I think it's too dangerous of information, because once you start acknowledging and confirming any of these different kinds of peak experiences, it starts to get more into the nature of our reality. And I think my personal opinion, and I have the right to be wrong, is that it's going to empower you, and you're going to realize more of your relationship to the nature of your reality and how you could shape and mold it and influence on it. Any one of these is going to lead you down a path to those things. And if we start freeing all these minds that realize that they are curators and creators in the matrix, and they could do that, they're not going to have the reins anymore. We are, right? I think that's
exactly
the number one reason.
Exactly, Brad. And I have great respect for Jacques Vallée, and he always ascribed to that control system. There's something in control. Hynek also, ascribed to that as well, as many others are coming around slowly. We need to understand the physical without question, but we also need to understand the experience of interacting with the phenomenon, maybe as important, if not more important, because it impacts one's body, mind, and soul in tremendous ways, and their experiences need to be validated. A lot of people suffer in silence when they interact with this. They'll go to sleep with covers over their head in fear that another mantis or whatever is going to walk through their wall. And I don't know why that's being done, why they do it that way, but it seems that they do, and they don't recognize maybe the impact of an emotional, traumatic nature that their interaction can induce in an individual. And I'm going by what people say. I never saw a non-human entity, but I've done so much reading and research for my books. You go on and on with the anecdotal reports. They're all very similar and different, but they all say the same thing. These people, we hear it all the time, are telling a true story. It happened to them. And science can't grasp it because it doesn't follow the scientific method. How do you study it? We know that. It doesn't ascribe to it. How do you study it? But there are many scientific groups that are looking at it, and they are gaining information about it. Not only the kinematic, physical aspect of the phenomenon, of course, but look, what is this Skinwalker Ranch, as we all know, and pilots who interact with the phenomena, the hitchhiker phenomenon. They see the UFO, and guess who comes home with them? They start having psychic experiences at home. We did a study. I wrote an article that was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration on 3,250 people. I was part of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Foundation, and about 90% of these people are saying their experience with these beings was like having an out-of-body experience floating up through a matrix, and where interaction occurred. And those that did have that experience, more than 10 times or so, did not want it to end. And what does that mean? Those that had it only 1 or 2 times, of course it was horrifying. How could it not be? But for some reason, they do adapt, and they realize, most, I don't know the percent, because there's a lot that it's horrific for many people. But in our data, we could be looking at many different phenomena here. Most of the interactions with non-human entities like you had don't occur with the UAP. A small percentage do. And people do report that physical interaction, lying on the table, the big guy staring down, the pain that they feel when the needles are, all that. Small percentage, much smaller than those that interact with beings not associated with the UAP. So UAP is important, yeah, but should I be looking at my wall to see if somebody's going to walk through it? Or should I be like Richard Dreyfuss and start making mashed potatoes in the form of Devil's Tower with that passion? You see, Steven Spielberg probably was an experiencer because he did nail it. He captured that passion that Dreyfuss had, didn't he? He couldn't stop. He had to go and see it, and he had to go on the ship. And I hope he had a good time. I'm sure he did.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like, I don't need proof once you've had an experience, but for me, like, just the confirmation, synchronicities. You can say the anecdotal evidence. I've had friends of mine that are not open to it at all. A good friend of mine mining, and he's been medicated, a schizophrenic, diagnosed schizophrenic, and this and that. And he opened up to me about it one day. I said, so what happened? What? And well, the experience he had, basically everything he's telling me about, like machine elves, jesters, and lizard people, and this and that he's seeing. And I'm like, I just sit there and, man, how do I tell this guy? I'm like, dude, I don't think you had anything wrong with you, but he's been on the medication for 20 years and this and that. I said, but I told him, I said, this is what people see in the DMT realm. I don't think you ever had anything wrong. I think you're a powerful psychic, and you're not integrating with that information with this reality properly. Like you said, it's freak you out. How do you go on and talk to other people when you speak a completely different language?
And, yeah, exactly, Brad. And there's a recent paper written by David Luke, noted researcher of psychedelics. Fascinating. Look for it. I almost feel aware of it, and I'd love to send it to you. You'll find it very interesting. David Luke, L-U-K-E. L-U-K-E, David Luke, researcher of psychedelics. Look him up. You'll see his publication on the internet. It just came out. They did a thematic analysis of people who took psilocybin, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, the psychoactive component of ayahuasca. You know what? He said about 100% of them reported interacting with non-human entities. And almost all of them said they were benevolent. Benevolent. Did you find that to be true?
Well, yeah, I've spoken to God, or the presence, whatever it is, the prime creator, I like to call it. Where I grew up just outside of Vancouver, in a little Dutch dairy farming community. And the good thing when you have a dairy farm and cow patties, the psilocybin mushrooms grow as thick as blades of grass. And I was taking, not only have I already had phenomenon my whole life, but at a very young age, 13, 14, I knew the older kids wanted the magic mushrooms, and I wanted they always grow at Halloween, and the older kids had the firecrackers. So I wanted to trade the mushrooms for the firecrackers, but it had me experiencing mushrooms at 13, 14 years old. And I've been connected to that benevolent, overwhelming force and understood everything's okay. There's nothing to worry about at a very, very young age. Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's a synchronistic in the sense that I always walk in an area in a park. It's a cattle ranch where where mushrooms and I used to see younger guys bending down and picking things up. And I said, what am I doing out there? Then I realized, these mushrooms grow from the manure. You have to know what's the good mushroom, I guess, or not, and and how to tell and what to take and how to do it. And that's what they were doing, looking for the psilocybin. You know what? Rick Strassman, you know the name. He did the first study on students at the University of New Mexico in the 1990s. And he compared the results from his subjects with the data with John Mack, the a psychiatrist from Harvard who had that big controversy, losing tenure because of his belief that these people who were reporting interacting with non-human entities and being abducted, so to speak, or contacted. And Rick Strassman mentions this in an interview. He says, I met with John Mack and we compared our notes. His results from the people who reported these abducted experiences with my subjects who had these DMT experiences, and we were, quote unquote, blown away by the similarity of the experience. And now David Luke comes along, who studies the DMT, and is actually saying something very similar, interacting with non-human entities that range from circus clowns and elves to graves and everything in between. You name it, you see it. So people say, well, are they seeing a different world, or are they seeing this world differently? I think they're seeing a different world. I really do. I never took psilocybin. Back in the 60s, I drank out of a bottle, when people were passing around listening to the Grateful Dead playing in Central Park in New York, and it didn't taste very well, and it was too heavy, if you know what I mean. I got a sense of that psychedelic experience, which is different now. If you know the proper dose, it's much cleaner, etc. Not speed. It's very different. I am tempted to do it, but it's not in the middle of doing a documentary. I'm just, I don't want to, I know a little too much about the brain, and I am hesitant to mess around with it. I will eventually, because look, science, medicine, you know that. I think the public knows it. The value of not only marijuana, but other psychoactive agents like DMT are very beneficial, of course, for those with PTSD, severe depression. It's the only thing that works. People have to be careful with it. Some minds are not ready for it for whatever psychological reason, but you should be supported by someone who understands it and to maybe guide you through in the first. I don't know. I don't know enough about it to really talk about how to take it and administer it and all that. But that's what I hear. It's good to do it with somebody you know, in the right environment at the right time. Better than I.
No,
you're the
I'm
expert.
a bit of a magic mushroom expert. I'm a huge advocate for the microdosing. That is a life-changing for myself and for many other people that I've helped get onto that path. And just like you say, as long as when you do a microdose, if you feel anything, you've done too much. But the overwhelming sense of well-being about 1 week into it, and depression, anxiety, addiction, it just eradicates those things. I can't speak well enough about microdosing. I mean, as I said, huge advocate, but even when you want to start going and having more experiences, now instead of taking 1/10 of a gram, which you would microdosing, you want to take 1 gram or 2 gram. I think Terence McKenna's heroic dose is 3 to 5 grams, which is child's play compared to what I used to do when I was a teenager. But if you are interested in doing it, I would recommend the easiest way is just take 1 gram in a tea. You're not going to hallucinate. You're not going to do anything, but you will have the overwhelming sense of love and benevolence, and you could just watch a funny movie and you'll have a great time.
And the question is why? Why the similarities? Why the interaction of beings? Why the similarities to the UAP and everything else? And that's a sense of well-being and all that. And is it a phenomenological aspect of brain function, or again, are people somehow are these mechanisms facilitating greater awareness of another reality? And that seems to be the case. And once people sense this other reality or this, I think we kind of get back into that default mode network. We become more relaxed and more aware, so to speak. It's almost like maybe a natural thing. And look, cultures in the past have somehow learned to perfect it to the point where it was tribal rituals. They did it for at least they thought, extremely important valid, good reasons. And it became an aspect of their culture, a part of their, look, who makes the most sense to me about this phenomena that we're talking about? Not only those like Jacques Vallée, Grant Cameron too, and a few others, a few others who get it, as far as I'm concerned, who get it. I heard a little interview with a shaman from a Indian tribe in the Southwest. He talked about this phenomenon. They live with it. It's part of their culture. They understand it, and because of their interactions with it, he even threw in a little quantum mechanics into it, to make even more sense of this dude knew more than anybody else I ever read about the phenomenon. It resonated with me. But that's the point. This science of the subjective. Listen to the people who do interact with it.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just experimental, and science is coming around because they're now starting to apply these psychoactive agents to help people who have severe emotional disorders. But we don't know why. We don't know why that is. And why the similarities among phenomena. Is it one phenomenon or many separate individual phenomena? Kathy Martin, who was the director of the experience research team for MUFON, they did a study similar to that of the Dr. Rick Mitchell Foundation that I was part of and left after I published that article with Russ Galpone. And their results on about 350 people were the same as ours. There's a psychic component to it. Not only do people interact with the UFOs, but those that do also experience, as you know, psychic effects. They even have medical healings. They sense something is about to happen. They may see shadow beings. Anything is possible. Anything, doors may open in their house. What do we call it? The high strangeness. Yeah. So what does that mean? And as a scientist, it disturbs me because this left brain here, who used to read almanacs as a kid, you see where I'm coming from? Yeah. That was my favorite book, Facts and Figures, left brain, analytical. And then you tell me, and then I see an orange orb and I have a shared death experience and say, what the heck is going on? It doesn't make sense to me. You can't throw the scientific method at it to understand it. I've always posed hypotheses, did experiments to prove or disprove a hypothesis. I feel so frustrated that I can't do that now. You see, because there's no experimental methodology that you can develop, as far as I know, that ascribes to the scientific method, and probably you should forget the scientific method. It doesn't work because we don't have the scientific principles to apply. You see, we have to study it differently in a non-traditional scientific way. And that's why I keep saying these peak experiences, whatever you want to call it, you, Brad, and millions of others like you, let's have, I don't know who, cultural anthropologists, psychologists, people from numerous disciplines, an interdisciplinary paradigm to study those that do interact with it, not to see if they're delusional. That has to be ruled out, no question about it. And then you're not in a group. But what David Luke just did, the thematic assessment of what the experience was, as best as can be qualitatively derived. What do you mean? Like, in other words, a mantis walked in your room. Let's okay. You just I heard it a million times, from well-balanced people. But there's more questions that many of these scientists, non-scientists should be better understanding through communicating with those who do have these unique experiences to really get at the phenomenon. You can't measure a ghost. You can measure a UAP in some ways, the speed, velocity, et cetera, what they give off, radiation effects on people. It's a real physical phenomena, but that consciousness component, that interaction with the mind, the invisibility, the dematerialization, the things we don't understand, obviously, the hitchhiker syndrome, all of that. What's that all about? How do you develop a hypothesis, plan an experiment to prove or disprove it? You can't. And that's what gets me so frustrated, Brad. You see, I come from a left brain world, and my right brain is just coming around, trying to grasp it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I really like how you brought up like in the Southwest, the native tribes and stuff like that. I've grown up around lots of natives where I live now in my family and friends, and I've studied lots of stuff. I always liked Carlos Castaneda and everything since I was young, and I think that's exactly what's happened. Is the people that would be declared schizophrenic or crazy or these days, those people were held to high esteem. Those people became the shaman, became the healers, and back in those tribes and stuff. And it's only nowadays with quantum physics and quantum mechanics, we're proving that what the natives always said, oh, everything's one and everything's connected and everything is, they were right. And Christianity and the white people went all over the world stomping those beliefs, religions, languages, traditions, stomp them right out.
I agree with you. Here in America, an experiencer will obviously be analyzed by a physician as likely or possibly having a mental problem of some type. Yet that same person, if they went, expressed that's the same experiences to a physician in India who practiced Buddhism or Hinduism, or whatever, or told people about it, they'd be considered a shaman or fortunate. They'd hold them in high esteem that they did interact with that other force that they recognized to be real. And unfortunately, many people are probably institutionalized, let alone at home taking antipsychotic medication when they should not be. It's terrible. It's terrible. They should be validated. And that's most unfortunate, truly is. And where people actually believe when they're told by someone wearing a white coat that you have a psychological problem because you said to me that you see UAPs making 90-degree turns. Well, they're not going to go there, but you, or you have you interact with non-human entities in your house, or etc. Or you see the doors open and you're missing time and no space. All of that weird stuff we hear on a daily basis. It's unfortunate that people are stigmatized and people debunk of those that are having these experiences. And for good reason, people don't speak about it. So even if we have a small d for disclosure that UAPs are real, it's about time. I wish Stanton Friedman was around to also recognize that and see that through, because he certainly did a lot to promote our understanding of the phenomenon. But still, what does disclosure mean? The Tell Institute, they even, and the UN, they even wrote papers on how to prepare humanity for the time in which we eventually discover life on other planets, other intelligences. Maybe the Webb telescope will reveal something. Who knows? How to present it to the public. They considered that as a real important aspect of better relating this phenomenon to people so that they can better accept it without driving too many people too crazy with that realization that non-human entities are interacting with us in varying ways and forms. So we do have a long way to go, but many people, unfortunately, are suffering needlessly, and people who debunk, put down, criticize those that have your kind of experiences, and among millions of others. I something, in a way, I appreciate if somebody would debunk me. You don't have to agree with me, but don't call me crazy. You have your opinion. You're more than entitled to it. Don't call me crazy, or I'm not going to be your friend because you're having these experiences. You must, that's a debunking. In a way, I'm glad you revealed that to me, because now I know to steer clear of you. Thank you for telling me that I want nothing to do with you. You have to find those that are accepting of it, and not everybody is, but at least you can be my friend and not agree with me. I'm sure you have friends that don't agree with you, and
For sure.
but until they have their own experience, and a lot of scientists, pilots, uh, researchers in academia, they're having these experiences.
Oh yeah.
That's why once they retire, that's why there's more momentum. More people are having it, more people are seeing UAPs, and that stigma is reducing to some extent because of the public disclosure via the news of what's going on. Thanks, of course, again to Dave Beatty, co-producer of our documentary. If I may say, consciousnessfilm.info is where you can get more information about our documentary. But because of all that, the hard work, time, and effort on the part of you and many others like Brandon Thomas.
Shout out to Brandon Thomas and Expanding Reality.
yeah. I mean, and many other podcasters, they get it. And that facilitates that greater awareness that's necessary. Maybe that greater awareness allows people to speak about it more frequently without fear of retribution, of course. And from what I'm reading, is there's a wave of these UAPs. I even went to a CE5 twice. Mike Merberg up in Darby Ranch, a little north of Tampa. They meet every month. Beautiful, beautiful people, and they.
I got to get to one of those.
They mental intention, calling it down, and they interact with it. Could be plasma intelligence. We don't need to go there, but plasma makes up the universe, 99% of it. And there's scientists who say it acts like a living, has properties of life in a laboratory. Maybe I should talk about it. And then
although there's lots of theories coming out, the electric universe and all these theories that is just going to blow the doors off of everything that we understand about our measurable 3D reality, that we've thought for so long. But that might be a topic for another day. I don't know if we take people down that rabbit hole. That'd be a couple hours on its own, right?
but once you start going on the rabbit hole, that hole doesn't come to an end. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And for the rest of your life and the others' experiences, you can't put the cork back in the bottle.
No,
you can't turn it off. Sometimes it gets too heavy. I've said this myself. I had enough of it. I got it. Yeah. And then you go right back in. You take a break for a while. Then you can't remove it completely. It's a passion. It's part of your heart, mind, and soul. And I commend you. I commend you for sharing your experiences and for helping educate many others who need to know that many millions of people are having these kinds of experiences. No question about it.
Well, and you and your team as well. I mean, like I said, I think it's more the people who pull the strings, the man behind the curtain, whether you want to call them Illuminati, Freemasons, all these type of, they know about this stuff. I mean, I've studied the Kabbalion, Manly P. Hall, Blavatsky, Isis Unveiled, The Secret Teachings of All Mankind, all these books. So these people do ceremony. These people talk to entities. They to the gods, to whatever you want to, interdimensional beings. So they know and have been practicing these for millennia, since all time, these secret societies. They just don't want us having that power. And in any one of these avenues, once you start seeing and believing and then understanding, is going to open the door for you to become a magician in your own right. And I think that we're going to have to drag society or mainstream media or whatever you want to call it, kicking and screaming.
Right.
They don't want people to know.
Exactly. But integrate that information and present it as a code. I tried to do that in my book, Unseen Forces. Try to make sense of it all. And you can't. You try to draw similarities and differences between all the phenomena that people experience, but there's enough similarities to suggest that there is an interrelationship among many of them. But we are looking at many different, I think, phenomena. What facilitates one versus another, I don't know. But everybody's focused not only on Bigfoot, which is, that's another story. What is that all about, right? And you go to Skinwalker Ranch, the smorgasbord of the paranormal. You name it, you got it there. I don't want any part of it because I don't want anything coming home with me, as people claim. And if you give off negative, people say you give off negative vibes, you get that in return. Karma, reminds you of karma, right? Positive vibes, they give you positive right back, or you won't be punished for it. But that concept of karma, you're kind of bringing that up. Seems to also be part of the phenomenon. But if you want it bad enough, you want to experience it bad enough, eventually you probably will. Maybe not in this lifetime, but certainly when you leave this container, you may very well.
That's right. When you leave and get your big hit of DMT, when you pass on, then speed races you to the other side. Well, I think we got getting close to ending the hour here, or I think we've gone probably over an hour. Did you want to plug where to find you and about the film and stuff again? And I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Sure.
For people
Thank you. The website for the film is consciousness.info, and it has all information about the participants there, and a GoFundMe page for those who resonate and wish to support our push for a paradigm shift by getting the right experts and experiences together and trying to integrate that information to help wake people up. My personal website is bobdavisspeaks.com, bobdavisspeaks.com, and people can certainly communicate with me there. But I want to thank you so much for all you do and for inviting me to appear with you. You're very, I have great respect for you, and you have a wonderful podcast. I'm sure will become more popular over time as word spreads about.
It's small now, but it's building. No, and thank you very much for coming on. All right, folks, it's been a wonderful trip here with Bob Davis. Check him out, and don't be cheap. Support him, and let's get this building wave of consciousness. Let's let the levee break and let all the information flow out. Hold the line there, Bob. I'm just going to stop the recording.